Hi everyone, welcome to a new video. I have been away because I just unfortunately couldn't make myself edit this video. I have recorded it quite a while ago. Some things happened, they are explained at the end of this video, and that's it. Anyway, I have finally edited it, and it's where I'm trying out finally acrylics. I am using Winsor Newton Galleria acrylics, and I'm also using something I never use, which is a canvas board. I'm going to say it right away, I don't know much about acrylics. I had this idea that they were a thick paint that as it dried it would turn into like a plastic silicone looking paint. And because of how glossy some acrylics seem to be, I was never really drawn into using them. I'm just not really a fan of glossy paints, and this is not what my experience was with them, which I'm pretty surprised and grateful for. As I started using the pigments, I was pretty surprised at how liquid they got easily with just a little bit of water, and how they seem to dry at the same time. So I followed some advice I got on Twitter, and I started placing my paints on top of a damp kitchen paper just so they wouldn't dry and stay on my palette forever, as a little bit of oil did and a little bit of previous paint my partner used on it did. So I'm gonna be honest and say that this initial part of testing the pigments was very discouraging. Because of how liquid they were, it was really hard to layer them, and I'm not sure how much the board contributed to my struggle. It is very textured, and because the paints were so watery, the texture would come through quite strong. I don't ever use canvas, but I don't dislike it. I just think I need to search for a different type of canvas. A lot of people suggested me trying wood or paper with a layer of gesso on top of it. Which I also bought for this experiment, together with a board and also the blue acrylic paint that I didn't have. After some tests, I decided to bite the bullet, and I sketched a bird, and I decided this would be my final trial, let's say, with the paints. And as I was working on the bird, I started being a bit more confident. I noticed that as I layered more and more pigments, the following layers would hold on to the canvas way easily, and it was starting to take a bit more shape. I also think that maybe acrylics would be great if I wanted to use a more permanent type of watercolor. I think that as I was like in this stage where the bird is looking quite painterly, I was like feeling some similarities to watercolor, and I guess that for someone who wants to do a lot of watercolor layers without the fear of raising the pigment that had been layered before, it might be very useful. So it might be something that I try in the future. But for this case in particular, where I was expecting a very chunky feeling, I wasn't getting it, so I was not really sure of how I felt about painting. But I think that, as I said, as it went on, it felt a bit more solid and a bit more easy to layer the pigment. Another thing about acrylics is that I cannot seem to help but comparing them to oils, because I always had this idea that they were like the counterpart of oil paint that dries quick. And it is true, it does dry quick, but it didn't feel like oil as I was working with it. One thing that I loved about oil paints was how easy they were to blend and how strong the pigment came as. And with acrylics, I didn't feel the same way. I felt they were a bit hard to blend. I felt like to blend it properly, I had to have it slightly wet, and it was very easy to go overboard with the amount of water. I added just a little drop would seem to make it way too liquid to do that kind of pastel looking blend where you can see the stroke of the paintbrush. So it didn't feel like oil in that sense. It felt a bit harder to blend. It was, however, superior to oil in the way that I didn't have to wait for a whole day for one layer of paint to dry so that I could apply a new layer without disturbing the pigments I had already placed on the board. So unlike oil, I did this painting on one sitting. I'm not sure how long it took me. I would say maybe the whole experiment took me maybe 4 hours, including the tests. I wanted to make this quite quick. I didn't want to dwell too much on the painting because this was a training exercise and I didn't want to be hung over little details. But I think I should have taken a bit more time. As I said a bit earlier, I don't like a bit how much the texture of the board comes through, and even when I was done with it, I think you can still see a lot of it, and maybe if I had taken more time layering more paint or trying to figure out how to make the paint a bit chunkier, it wouldn't have been so bad and maybe the texture wouldn't be so noticeable. Otherwise, I think acrylics and the canvas board are okay. I don't know if I would recommend a canvas board to everyone, because if you are like me, you might prefer to try the gesso layer on the paper technique and then paint on it. But it did feel a bit more long-lasting, I might say. Painting on a board made me feel like I was like, wow, doing a real painting, very professional. So I bought 3 boards. I'm using one of them on this painting, but I think I will try and do another one with oil on one of the other boards and see how it compares to acrylic on board. As for acrylics, I did enjoy them in the end. They were not great to work with as with oil, but they do have the factor that they are so quick drying, and also they are easier to clean if you don't let them dry onto things. With oil it didn't feel as easy even if the paint was still wet. With acrylics not so much. As long as they were still not dried, they were easy to take out. But overall, acrylics are okay. I don't feel as enthusiastic about using them again as I do with oils, but they are still a medium I enjoyed. And I think that's about it. I will leave you to the rest of this painting, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all later. Bye!